Part 1. I never thought I'd be the man telling this kind of story. My name is Richard, and for the past 7 years, I lived what I thought was the dream. A loving wife, a beautiful home, and a job that paid well enough to keep us comfortable. Jessica and I had been together since college. She was the kind of woman who could light up a room just by stepping into it. Blonde hair, piercing blue eyes, and a smile that made me believe in heaven. Our life together was nothing short of perfect, or so I thought. Jessica worked as an event planner, a job that suited her social, energetic nature. I was in finance, my work being more methodical and routine. We complemented each other. She made sure our lives were exciting, while I ensured our future was secure. Our friends admired us, calling us the golden couple. We had frequent date nights, weekend getaways, and an undeniable chemistry that people envied. We had plans. Big ones. Kids were on the horizon. We had even started scouting for a bigger house, imagining a nursery with soft pastel colors and a backyard where our future children would play. Jessica loved the idea of a garden, where she could grow flowers and fresh vegetables, while I pictured a quiet study where I could read on lazy Sunday mornings. Every morning, she would wake up before me, leaving a warm cup of coffee on my nightstand with a little note. Always something sweet, something simple. Have a great day, my love. It was the small things that made our marriage special. I would come home from work to a house filled with the aroma of a home-cooked meal. We'd eat together, talk about our day, and curl up on the couch to watch our favorite shows. On weekends, we'd go out with friends or have intimate evenings in. I never once doubted the strength of our relationship. We had built something solid, something real. Our love was effortless. We laughed often, sometimes over the silliest things. Jessica had a habit of dancing around the kitchen while she cooked, twirling as she stirred sauces, humming her favorite songs. I'd sneak up behind her, wrapping my arms around her waist, and she'd giggle, playfully swatting me away. She was my best friend, my partner in crime, my everything. Vacations were always special for us. We had a tradition of traveling somewhere new every anniversary. Paris, Santorini, the Maldives. We had seen the world together, hand in hand, creating memories that I thought would last a lifetime. I loved watching the way her eyes lit up when she discovered something new, the way she excitedly took pictures of everything so she could scrapbook them later. She was a dreamer, and I loved that about her. Holidays were even better. Christmas mornings meant waking up to the smell of cinnamon rolls baking in the oven, exchanging thoughtful gifts, and watching classic movies wrapped under a blanket. Thanksgiving was filled with laughter as we hosted friends and family, with Jessica taking the lead in preparing an extravagant meal. Even the simplest days were magical with her. We spent our weekends hiking, exploring new restaurants, or just lazing around the house with coffee and books. She made life an adventure, and I cherished every second of it. Even on the hardest days, when work was stressful and exhausting, coming home to Jessica made everything better. She was my safe place, my peace in a chaotic world. She always made time for me, no matter how busy she was. I remember one particularly difficult week at work when a major project had me working late nights. I came home one evening, completely drained, only to find that Jessica had transformed our living room into a cozy retreat. Candles flickered, soft music played, and she stood there with a glass of my favorite whiskey, smiling. "I figured you could use a break," she said, pulling me into her arms. I melted into her embrace, grateful beyond words. She had a way of making everything feel right, no matter how chaotic the world outside was. Another time, I had a rough bout with the flu. Jessica took care of me in a way that made me feel cherished beyond measure. She made me soup, sat by my bedside, and even read aloud from my favorite books. She stayed up late, running her fingers through my hair as I drifted in and out of sleep. "You take care of me, I take care of you. That's how it works, babe," she whispered. I was convinced I had married the most incredible woman in the world. Our relationship wasn't just about passion. It was about deep, unwavering love. The kind of love that movies try to capture but never quite got right. The kind of love that felt infinite. We talked about growing old together, picturing ourselves sitting on a porch, watching the sunset, reminiscing about the life we had built. Jessica would joke that she'd be the feisty old woman yelling at kids to stay off our lawn, and I'd be the one sneaking them candy behind her back. "You're too soft," she'd tease, poking my side. "That's why I love you." I had never felt luckier. In my mind, we were unbreakable. Jessica was my person, and I was hers. And for 7 beautiful years, I believed nothing could ever change that. Part 2. It started as a whisper. A murmur in the background, nothing more than a faint echo in passing conversations. At first, I didn't notice it. Why would I? My life with Jessica was perfect. We were happy, secure, and nothing could shake the foundation we had built over the years. But whispers have a way of growing. It began at work, in the break room, where my colleagues exchanged office gossip over coffee. I wasn't one for petty talk, but that day, I caught my name mixed into their hushed tones. As I stepped closer, the voices fell silent, eyes darting away in discomfort. "What's going on?" I asked, forcing a chuckle to lighten the awkward tension. Nobody spoke at first, but then, Mark, a guy I had worked with for years, sighed and set his coffee down. "Look, Rich, it's probably nothing, but people have been talking." "Talking about what?" I frowned. He hesitated, looking around as if making sure no one else could hear. "About Jessica." "About, well, let's just say, there are some rumors." A cold wave washed over me. "What kind of rumors?" Mark sighed, clearly uncomfortable. "I don't know if it's true, but some people have seen her, spending a lot of time with someone. A guy." I let out a relieved laugh, shaking my head. "Jessica's an event planner. She meets with a lot of people, Mark. It's part of her job." He nodded, but his expression remained tense. "I get that, man. But this isn't work-related. It's been after hours. Different places around town. The gym. A restaurant. Places you wouldn't normally meet a client." I forced a smile. "Come on, that's ridiculous. You're telling me people are watching my wife and assuming things? That's crazy." "Maybe," Mark admitted. "But you know how people are. They talk. And I just thought, as your friend, I should at least tell you." I thanked him, dismissed the conversation as absurd, and went about my day. But the unease lingered. I told myself it was nonsense, that people loved to spread rumors for entertainment, that there was no way Jessica would do anything inappropriate. But then, I started noticing things I had brushed off before. Jessica's phone seemed permanently attached to her hand. She used to leave it on the table when we ate dinner, but now it was always face down or tucked away in her pocket. She started getting texts late at night, claiming they were from colleagues needing last-minute event updates. When I asked who, she would give vague answers and quickly change the subject. One night, I met up with some friends at a bar downtown. It was an impromptu thing, just a way to unwind after a long week. As we laughed and talked, a familiar voice drifted over from the other side of the room. Jessica's voice. My stomach twisted as I turned toward the sound. She was there, sitting in a dimly lit booth, her head tilted slightly as she leaned in toward a man I didn't recognize. He was tall, fit, well-dressed, and their conversation seemed intimate, too intimate. She hadn't mentioned going out that night. She had told me she was exhausted and wanted to stay in. I didn't confront her. I didn't march over and demand answers. Instead, I stayed frozen in place, watching as she laughed at something he said, her hand brushing against his arm in a way that sent a dagger through my chest. "Richard," my friend nudged me. "You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." "Yeah," I muttered, forcing myself to look away. "I'm fine. Just thought I saw someone I knew." I barely heard the rest of the conversation. My mind spun, replaying what I had just seen, trying to make sense of it. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe he was just an old friend. Maybe I was overthinking, letting the rumors get to me. That night, when I got home, Jessica was already in bed, pretending to be asleep. I stood there in the doorway, watching her, my mind racing. Should I ask her? Should I mention what I saw? But what if I was wrong? What if I was being paranoid over nothing? I let it go. For the moment. But the rumors didn't stop. Days later, I ran into an old acquaintance, Sarah, who had once worked with Jessica. We exchanged the usual pleasantries, but then her tone shifted. "Richard, I don't want to meddle, but is everything okay with you and Jessica?" I tensed. "Yeah, why?" She hesitated, biting her lip. I saw her a few times recently. With someone. And it looked, well, it didn't look like business, if you know what I mean." I forced a smile. "Jessica has a lot of friends, Sarah." "I know," she said carefully. But this felt different. I didn't press for more details. I didn't want to know. Not yet. But something had shifted in me. The doubts I had tried to ignore were no longer whispers in my mind. They were screaming. I needed to find out the truth. And I was afraid of what I might uncover. Part 3. The unease that had been gnawing at me turned into a full-blown obsession. I told myself the rumors were just that, rumors. That people loved to speculate, love to tear down something that seemed too perfect. But no matter how hard I tried to dismiss them, I couldn't erase the image of Jessica leaning in close to that man at the bar. Then, everything changed in an instant. It was a Friday night when I received the message. An unknown number. Just a single text. We need to talk. It's about Jessica. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. I hesitated before responding. Who is this? The reply came almost instantly. Meet me at the parking lot behind Miller's Bar. You'll want to see this. I don't know what possessed me to go. Maybe it was the lingering doubt, the gut feeling I had ignored for too long. Maybe I was just tired of pretending everything was fine. When I pulled into the parking lot, a man was already there, leaning against his car. He was tall, fit, dressed casually in a leather jacket. Something about him felt instantly off. His confidence, his smirk, it was like he had already won. Richard, he said smoothly. I was wondering if you'd actually show. Who the hell are you? I demanded. He chuckled, shaking his head. Man, this is awkward. My name's Jake. I think you know why we're here. I felt my blood turn to ice. I don't know you. What do you want? He pulled his phone out, swiping at the screen before holding it up. I figured you should see for yourself. The video played. A hotel room, dimly lit. Jessica. My Jessica, sitting on a bed, laughing. The sound of her voice, soft, familiar, but different. Playful in a way I hadn't heard in years. And then, him. Jake. Walking toward her. Kissing her. Her arms wrapping around his neck like it was the most natural thing in the world. I couldn't breathe. Then the clothes came off. My stomach twisted as I watched them tangled together in ways I could never unsee. It was raw, passionate, an intimacy she once reserved for me. The moans, the way she clung to him, the way she whispered his name. I felt my hands shaking. My vision blurred with rage, with pain so deep it felt like my chest was being ripped open. Turn it off, I rasped. Jake smirked, sliding his phone back into his pocket. Hurts, doesn't it? I clenched my fists, every nerve in my body screaming to punch that smug look off his face. Why are you showing me this? He shrugged. Figured you should know. I mean, we've been at it for months. Thought you deserved the truth. I took a step forward, my entire body shaking. You think this is funny? You think this is some kind of joke? Jake's expression hardened. No, man, I don't. But I've been in your shoes before, and I wish someone had told me instead of letting me be the idiot in the dark. Consider this a favor. A favor. I had never felt rage like this before. It wasn't just anger, it was humiliation. It was betrayal so deep I thought I might explode from it. What do you want from me? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Jake sighed, running a hand through his hair. Nothing. I'm done with her. She's yours again, if you still want her. Something inside me snapped. I lunged, grabbing him by the collar and shoving him against his car. You don't get to talk about her like that. He didn't fight back. Just smirked. Then do something about it. I wanted to. God, I wanted to break him. But what was the point? He wasn't the one who made vows to me. He wasn't the one who promised me forever. Jessica was. I let go, stepping back, breathing hard. Stay the hell away from me. He nodded, straightening his jacket. Whatever you say, man. Good luck with her. I turned, walking away, my hands still shaking. My world had just shattered, and I had no idea what to do next. I got in my car, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. My breath was ragged, my heart hammering against my ribs. I wanted to scream, to hit something, to erase the image burned into my brain. Instead, I drove. I didn't go home. I couldn't. I ended up at an empty parking lot, staring at the city lights, trying to make sense of the wreckage of my life. How had I not seen it? How had I let this happen? Had she ever loved me? Or had I just been a placeholder? I thought about texting her, about calling her, demanding answers. But what would she say? Would she deny it? Cry? Beg? Would she even care that I knew? I sat there for hours, replaying the last 7 years of my life, searching for the moment it all fell apart. One thing was certain. Jessica had no idea what was coming for her. Part 4. I barely slept that night. The images from the video played in my mind on an endless loop, each frame a knife twisting deeper into my gut. I had spent years of my life believing in Jessica, trusting her, loving her. And now, I was left with nothing but betrayal and rage. By morning, I had made my decision. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to let her see me broken. I was going to destroy her. I waited until she got home from work that evening, acting as if nothing was wrong. My hand shook as I set my phone on the dining table, the video already queued up. Jessica walked in, humming softly, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor. She smiled at me, that same smile that once made my world light up. Now, it made my stomach turn. "Hey, babe," she greeted, setting her purse down. "How was your day?" I didn't answer. I just pressed play. The sound of her laughter filled the room, but it wasn't coming from her lips, it was coming from the phone. The grainy hotel footage flickered across the screen, showing her tangled in bed with Jake, her body arching, her voice whispering things she had only ever whispered to me. Jessica's face drained of color. What is this?" she stammered. I looked at her, my expression blank. "You tell me." Her hands trembled as she grabbed the phone, her eyes darting over the screen. And then, like clockwork, the performance began. She scoffed. "Are you serious right now? Richard, this is fake. This is obviously fake." I said nothing, letting her dig her own grave. It's photoshopped, or some deepfake AI garbage. "You really think I would do this to you? You think I'd sleep with some random guy?" She forced out a bitter laugh, shaking her head. "God, I can't believe you'd even entertain this bullshit." "His name is Jake," I said flatly. "Not a random guy. You seem to know him pretty well in the video." Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. I don't know a Jake. This isn't real, Richard. I swear to God, someone is trying to set me up. Why would you believe this?" I tilted my head, feigning curiosity. "Why would someone go through the trouble of creating a fake sex tape just to ruin your reputation? Who would even care enough to do that?" She faltered. I don't know. Maybe an old ex? Maybe someone jealous of us? You do work in finance. Maybe it's some business rival trying to mess with you." I almost laughed at the desperation in her voice. She was scrambling, clawing for anything to shift the blame. But it didn't matter. I had already made up my mind. I sighed, standing up. "I'm not going to argue with you, Jessica. I just wanted to see if you'd admit it. Clearly, you won't." She grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my skin. "Richard, please. You have to believe me. I would never cheat on you. You know me." I shook her off. I thought I did. I walked away as she called after me, her voice breaking, her panic growing. I locked myself in the bedroom and ignored her frantic knocking. I didn't care what she had to say anymore. I had work to do. That night, while Jessica slept on the couch, I began preparing. I gathered copies of our joint financial statements, printed out records of her late-night transactions, and took screenshots of every suspicious text she had ever sent. I called a lawyer first thing in the morning and scheduled a meeting. I didn't tell Jessica. She didn't deserve a warning. I filed for divorce in secret. But that wasn't enough. Jessica had built a reputation at her job, an event planner, known for her poise, her professionalism, her perfect image. She thrived on public perception. So, I wrote a letter. A detailed, carefully crafted letter addressed to her boss, outlining the truth about the kind of woman they had working for them. I didn't include the video itself, I wasn't that cruel, but I made sure to highlight her pattern of deception, the blatant disrespect she had shown toward our marriage, and the way she had used business trips as a cover for her affairs. I sealed the envelope and sent it directly to her workplace. And then, I waited. The next few days were hell. Jessica sensed something was off, but was still convinced she could manipulate her way out of it. She made my favorite meals, wore the lingerie she knew I liked, acted as if nothing had happened. But I barely spoke to her. I barely looked at her. Then, one evening, she came home looking different. Shaken. Pale. Her hands gripping the strap of her purse so tightly her knuckles turned white. "Richard," she whispered. "What did you do?" I set my drink down, staring at her with feigned innocence. "What do you mean?" Her eyes filled with tears. "You sent something to my office. I got called into a meeting today, and they suspended me. Do you know what you've done?" I shrugged. "Just letting people know the truth." She let out a choked sob, covering her mouth. "My boss thinks I'm a liar. That I've been using company funds for personal expenses. They're investigating me. Richard, they might fire me." I leaned back in my chair, taking a slow sip of my drink. "Should have thought about that before you slept with Jake." She let out a scream of frustration, throwing her purse across the room. "You're ruining my life." I stood up, towering over her. "You ruined ours first." Jessica collapsed onto the floor, sobbing. But I felt nothing. Not pity, not guilt. Nothing but the cold satisfaction of knowing that this was only the beginning. She had no idea what was coming next. Part 5. Jessica's world crumbled piece by piece. And I stood there, watching it all burn, feeling nothing but satisfaction. After her job's investigation, the company wasted no time cutting ties. She had spent years building a reputation as one of the best event planners in the industry, but no company wanted to be associated with a woman who used business trips as a cover for cheating. The official statement was vague, something about professional misconduct, but word spread quickly. Clients started pulling out of contracts. Former colleagues stopped responding to her calls. Even her so-called friends, the ones she used to gossip with over wine, distanced themselves. She had built her entire life on image, on being admired and respected, and now it was slipping through her fingers like sand. I watched as she spiraled. She begged me not to go through with the divorce. She tried everything. Apologies, tears, screaming, even seduction. But I had seen the truth. I had felt the truth in the pit of my stomach as I watched her betray me. No amount of words could erase that. I moved out of the house before she did. It was mine, legally, but I didn't want it anymore. Too many memories, too much rot seeping into the walls. I let her stay there, but not out of kindness. I knew she couldn't afford it. Not with no job, no income, and no one left to run to. Her lover, Jake, was long gone. He had already moved on, leaving her stranded in the wreckage of her own making. And that's when the desperation set in. She started showing up at my new apartment. At first, she knocked. Then she pounded. Then she screamed through the door, wailing about how I was ruining her life, how I was cruel and vindictive. I never answered. Eventually, she stopped coming. The last I heard, she had moved into a dingy, one-bedroom apartment on the other side of town. She sold her designer bags, her jewelry, anything she could to stay afloat. But jobs were hard to come by when your reputation was tainted. She went from planning elite corporate events to begging for work at local catering companies, and even they wouldn't touch her. It was poetic justice. And through it all, the most unexpected thing happened. I became friends with Jake. At first, I hated him. I wanted to destroy him just as much as I had destroyed Jessica. But after that night in the parking lot, something shifted. Maybe it was the way he had looked at me, not with malice, not with gloating, but with something close to understanding. He had been cheated on before, too. And he had given me something invaluable, the truth. One night, months after everything had settled, he called me out of the blue. "Drink," was all the text said. I stared at it for a while before replying. "Sure." We met at a bar downtown. I expected it to be awkward, but it wasn't. We sat, we drank, and we talked about the sheer insanity of it all. I didn't know she was married at first, Jake admitted, shaking his head. She never wore a ring. Never mentioned you. When I found out, well, I guess I didn't care as much as I should have. I took a slow sip of my drink. "At least you told me. Most guys wouldn't have." He shrugged. "Been there. Didn't want you going through the same bullshit I did." We drank in silence for a moment before he chuckled. "So, what now? Gonna go find someone new?" I smirked. "Not in a rush. Honestly, I'm enjoying the peace. No lies, no late night, work events, no hidden phone messages. It's nice." He nodded. "Yeah, freedom has its perks." And just like that, an unlikely friendship formed. Jessica, on the other hand, had nothing left. The last time I saw her was by accident. I was driving past a grocery store when I spotted her sitting outside, staring blankly at the sidewalk. She looked hollow. The once polished woman who had captivated rooms now looked like a shell of herself. Dark circles under her eyes, hair unkempt, clothes that looked hastily thrown together. For a moment, I almost felt pity. Almost. Then I remembered the video. The way she laughed with Jake, the way she clung to him, the way she had thrown away our life without a second thought. I didn't stop the car. I didn't look back. Jessica had chosen her path. And I had chosen mine. The end.